Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Gabby and welcome. If you've never been here before, never watched any of my videos, have no idea what I do here on my channel, I cover true crime cases, and pretty much all of the cases that I cover are a little bit older. They're all basically 20 years or older, so if that's something that you might be interested in, maybe go down below, click that subscribe button, and also make sure to turn on the post notifications to be notified every time that I upload, or at least every time that YouTube decides to notify you. So today we have another Vintage and Vanished video. And if you don't know what Vintage and Vanished is, it's a series on my channel where I cover cases from years back of people who have gone missing. About a month or two ago, I was reached out to by someone working with the family of an individual who had gone missing back in 1994. I get a lot of requests during the week, but this one stuck out to me. I had never heard of her case before. Other than the person working with the family, I was also able to speak directly to the victim's sister, Colleen. I thank you both tremendously for helping me with my research for today's video, and I hope more than anything that Shaylene's case can be solved. So with all that being said, let's get right into it. Piqua, Ohio. It is located in Miami County, which is in southwestern Ohio, about 27 miles directly north of Dayton. At the start of the 1990s, its population was documented at 20,612. It held a bit more people than most of the areas we've previously discussed on my channel, but still, it was a small area. People have described this area as one of those areas where everyone knew everyone else living there. Word always got around very quickly. It's the type of area where a secret usually never just stays to one person. It's rich in history though, with a lot of gorgeous buildings dating back hundreds of years. Locals also love the farmer's market, and you won't run out of antique stores or gift shops to shop around at. Most would never guess, walking along the streets of downtown Piqua, that such a place could be home to a 27-year-old mystery that still haunts many to this day. This is the disappearance of Shaylene Farrell. Shaylene Marie Farrell, people close to her called her Shay, was born on June 19th of the year 1976. Although this story takes place in Ohio, she was born in Canada along with her younger brother Michael. Then her family would move to New Jersey, where her younger sister Colleen would be born, and then they moved to Ohio. Shaylene's mother for the most of their growing up was a single mother who worked very hard to take care of her family, sometimes even working 3 jobs. Shaylene at the time of her disappearance was 18 years old, and she was eagerly waiting to enter her senior year of high school at Piqua High School. She was living at the time with her mother and her mother's fiance, Dwayne Childers. Several weeks before her disappearance, she had actually moved back in with her family because she had been living with a friend for a period of time. Reasoning for this was the fact that her mother had caught Shaylene smoking marijuana in the house. Shaylene's mother disagreed with this. There was some tension because of this incident, and Shaylene decided to stay with a friend as a result. But by August, she was living back with her family, and they had all moved past this incident by then. Now let's get into the day of her disappearance. The time was around 10 in the morning on August 8th of 1994, and Shaylene was feeling a bit thirsty, so she went to the refrigerator. Unfortunately though, the drink she desired, which was iced tea, was not in the fridge. Yes, she could have just grabbed another drink, but Shaylene figured since they lived not far from the grocery store she worked at, that she'd just hop in the car, drive over, and grab some. Shouldn't take too long, especially considering that the store that she was heading to, Pick and Save, was located in the 1500 block of Covington Avenue, only about a mile and a half away from their home. Shaylene did ask her younger sister Colleen if she wanted to tag along for the ride, but Colleen needed to stay home to watch their 2 younger siblings at the time, who were both toddlers, Shane being nearly 4 and Sean being 2. Now, Shailene, she didn't have her own car at the time, so she picked up her mother's car keys and left the home. She should have been back in about 20 minutes or so. You may be wondering where her mother was at the time if Shailene was using her car, and it was a Monday morning and all. Shailene's mother, Darlene, was actually in New Jersey at this time visiting Shailene's grandmother because her grandmother was having some health concerns and was in the hospital at the time. So Darlene was out of the area. Shailene's brother, Michael, who was 16 at the time, went along with their mother to help. The last time anyone saw Shailene was when Colleen saw her driving away in their mother's silver 1981 Chevy Malibu. When Shailene left, all she brought with her was the money for the tea. That's it. No more money, she didn't bring her ID, other clothing, nothing. Just the money for the tea and also, of course, the car keys. Hours pass by and her sister Colleen is wondering, where is Shailene? It was supposed to be a quick ride to grab a beverage, but she hasn't been back yet. I would say she was a bit confused at this point, but not entirely worried yet, because of course, Shailene was 18 years old, she had turned 18 about 6 weeks earlier, and maybe she ran into some friends. Maybe she decided to head somewhere else afterwards. Possibly she was just excited to have her mom's car and wanted to go out by herself for a little bit. That would make sense. But again, she didn't bring anything else with her. If she was going somewhere else, wouldn't you think she'd at least stop by the house and grab a few other things? More hours passed by and worry was starting to set in. Shailene was supposed to be in at work, none other than the Pick and Save, for her 7 p.m. shift. The time for her shift rolled around and a call was made to her house asking where Shailene was because she did not show up to work. Other than Colleen being home, another individual in the home was Shailene's mother's fiance, Dwayne. He had actually been sleeping most of the day because he worked night shifts, and when he woke up, he was informed of Shailene not being home yet from what was supposed to be a very quick grocery trip. Shailene was a teenager, she enjoyed her fun, and had been in trouble by her parents before. So at first, Dwayne figured Shailene had just gone out for the day and didn't care enough to show up to work that evening. The reality of the situation, though, would be far different. Dwayne went to work that night and Colleen went on with her night, but she was definitely concerned. Colleen had been watching their little brothers most of the day. She was just hoping to hear something soon. It wasn't like Shailene to just go out, skip work, then stay out all night and tell absolutely no one where she was. On the morning of the 9th, Dwayne gets home from work, and he is shocked to find out that Shailene is still not home. Dwayne had talked to Darlene the night before and told her that Shailene had been out all day, and this of course worried her mother. After a day of no word, they phoned some of Shailene's friends to see if anyone had heard from her in the past 24 hours. They call around and pretty much everyone said the same thing, that they hadn't heard from Shailene since Sunday, the day before she left her home to get the iced tea. The last friend to have seen Shailene in person was Shailene's best friend, Amy. Shailene and Amy spent most of the past Sunday together, riding around the town, visiting some of their other friends until Amy dropped Shailene off at her house around 9 because Shailene wanted to watch a movie that was supposed to be on TV that night. Keep in mind that this was before DVR, so if you wanted to watch a movie, you had to be there. They talked on the phone when the movie was over, and that was the last time they spoke. Darlene was notified her daughter was missing and starts making plans immediately to cut her trip short to New Jersey and get back to Ohio. She gets in the next day. By this time, police were already notified of Shailene's disappearance from Dwayne and Shailene's best friend, Amy, which, if you're not new here, if you're a fan of true crime, if you're familiar with a lot of cases, most of the time when a young person goes missing, especially someone who is of 18 years old, they usually chop it up to them being a runaway, which a large percentage of the time a young person goes missing, they usually show up very quickly. But that was not the case with Shailene, and her loved ones knew that, and details would arise proving she didn't use tea as an excuse to skip town on a random Monday morning. There were 4 main investigators put on the case, and the main one was Bruce Jameson, who worked with the family up until his retirement in the year 2019. We have to remember, though, that not only Shailene was missing, but also an entire vehicle, which would soon be located. Darlene's Chevy Malibu was found in coincidentally the Pick and Save parking lot. Since Shailene worked there, even though she had only been working there for the past 2 weeks, everyone who worked there knew who she was, and the employees there were asked if they had seen Shailene the day before, and they all agreed that she had never made it into the store. Even stranger, while looking around the car, there was no evidence of any foul play. Not in the car or in the surrounding parking lot outside of it. It was just the car and no Shailene. So somewhere between getting out of it and heading into the grocery store, the teenager vanished. The car windows had been rolled down a little bit, but this could have easily been chopped up to Shailene rolling them down on a hot summer day in August. The car keys, which was a blue sapphire and diamond key ring with about 5 keys on it, this was also missing. A teenager may keep some things from their family. Every teenager does. So her close friends were questioned, mostly about whether Shailene had discussed with any of them a desire to run away. All of them agreed that she never had. That, yeah, sometimes typical teenager problems arose, but she loved her life and didn't want to escape it. The word of her disappearance spread around the area, and it was released to the public that there was speculation that possibly she had been abducted, and that anyone who had had any recent contact with the 18-year-old is urged to speak to authorities working on the case. Her family and friends did not believe the runaway theory for a second. Shailene would have had no money on her. Shailene had cashed her first check from her job the previous Friday, and she made about $50. In today's time, that would be about $98. She had given $30 of it to her mom for her part of the rent and phone bill, and she spent most of the other $20 on a Tim McGraw CD and some makeup. And she didn't have a credit card or bank card from my knowledge or on her nonetheless. One thing about Shailene is that she was so excited for her senior year, to go to prom, to graduate, to attend college, and she wanted to major in education. She wanted to be a teacher. She had so many things to look forward to that she made clear that she was insanely excited about. The bottom line is she did not run away, and as months went on, police themselves started believing that. By the time authorities came to the conclusion that Shailene wasn't a runaway, the time their main effort in the case would have been crucial had passed. Her family was disappointed that they didn't take her case more seriously from the very beginning. When it comes to a missing persons case, a lot of the time they will immediately start questioning the significant other. Shailene was not dating anyone at the time of her disappearance, and it doesn't seem like she had any past lovers who had any ill will towards her. She was a well-liked girl with no known enemies, and when it came to her family, everyone in her family was cleared of being a suspect in her case. Families ruled out and no lovers or past lovers, but what about friends? Did any of her friends seem suspicious? Well, it was said that Shailene had made some recent friends from the Greenville, Ohio area. This group was a bit older than Shailene and were the ones who got her into smoking marijuana. This area of Greenville was located about a half an hour west of Piqua. During the week of the 15th, Darlene had actually received a call from a man. This man had been friends with Shailene, a part of that friends group, and told Darlene to tell authorities to back off because he had no involvement in Shailene's disappearance. Darlene, of course, notified authorities of this call immediately. This man who called has been left unnamed to the public along with another man. These two men had been looked at by authorities and both had criminal pasts and had served time behind bars. Darlene only knew about these friends of Shailene's from the minor things that Shailene told her about them. Information about these two individuals is very limited online, but if you look around, you will find their names written by people who live in the area. But due to legal reasons, I'm going to keep their names private in this video. Due to there being no solid proof that they had any involvement in Shailene's disappearance, there wasn't and isn't much that police can do about these two individuals. Her family truly leaned towards the idea that Shailene had been a victim of a homicide, and they decided to hold a memorial service for her and print a proper obituary for her in the local paper. This decision, though, would not intervene with the actual investigation, though, at all. Authorities had received hundreds upon hundreds of tips about Shailene's disappearance, but very few of them seemed promising enough to even consider to follow. There were a few supposed sightings of Shailene that were called in though. One was from a person claiming they saw her in a vehicle driving down I-75 with an unknown man, but there was no way to prove if this had actually been Shailene or not. The phrase "gone without a trace" truly is the epitome of this case. I don't think I've covered another one where there was really such a non-existent trace to what happened to a person. No one came forward claiming to have seen her in the parking lot. No one claimed to have seen her in the store that day. There was no record she had entered the store or purchased what she went in to buy. No signs of a struggle, no blood, no suspicious fingerprints, no actual crime scene to look at, no surveillance tape to watch. Nothing. And most of what was said about what possibly happened to Shailene or who may have been involved, whether that's actually what happened or not, it's just word of mouth. One theory was that she had maybe gone voluntarily with someone, which, you know, if these two friends had come by and picked her up and they had something to do with her disappearance or suspected homicide, that would make sense because she did know them. But it is a theory that maybe she got out of the car and someone she knew had pulled up and she left with them, and that maybe this person or people had ulterior motives for picking her up. To me though, when I think about it, what are the chances someone she knew would be there at the local pick and save as well at 10 o'clock in the morning, unless they knew she was going to be there? Something to think about. It's very odd. Years would pass before a tip that looked hopeful would come in, and that would be 1998. In 1998, they received one tip that made them kind of perk up a little bit. Authorities were told that two men had abducted and murdered Shailene and then dumped her body in a field in Union City, Ohio, which is about a 45-minute drive west of Piqua. I was curious if these two men being talked about were the same two men I talked about before who had been friends with Shailene and the one who called Darlene, and Colleen informed me that yes, they are the same two men. Well, authorities went to this field and tracker dogs seemed interested in 3 specific spots on the field. These 3 spots were then dug up to see if they could find anything there, any clues. Well, they wouldn't find anything of any relation to Shailene. Tracker dogs do make mistakes at times, of course. But the fact that these dogs had picked up on 3 spots on this field, maybe Shailene wasn't there then, but maybe she had been there before. I do have to say though that this huge search wasn't just because of Shailene's disappearance. There was a bit of a new interest and new tips being called in regards to her disappearance because another girl had recently went missing. The girl being 19-year-old Lynn Top of North Star, Ohio, a village in Darke County. Keep in mind that Greenville, the area where Shailene had that group of friends, is also in Darke County. Lynn went missing on February 21st of 1998. Searches in Piqua, Greenville, and Union City had all been done, and they never found anything in those locations having any relation to Shailene. Lynn Top's remains, though, would be found March 6th of 1998, about 2 weeks after her disappearance, on a farm in Rose Hill in Darke County. The owner of the farm, though, was coincidentally, suspiciously missing. They later found him in a neighbor's barn weeks later. He had shot himself, and it is believed he was the one who abducted and killed her. And it is not believed that this murderer, named Timothy K. Roadheffer, had any involvement in Shailene's disappearance, though. It was Lynn's disappearance and unfortunate murder that got people talking about Shailene's disappearance again, which is a good thing. It was definitely bittersweet, though, because with Lynn's disappearance, so many people helped in the search, and it seemed like the community really got together and put their differences aside, any differences they may have had, and wanted to find this girl. But the area of Piqua, they didn't really do that for Shailene. Shailene's family, of course, their hearts broke for what happened to Lynn, but they just wished that Shailene had received the same effort, and then maybe her case could have had a similar outcome to Lynn's. Maybe it could have also been solved so fast. Of course, Shailene nor Lynn should have had the outcome to their lives the way that they did, but Lynn's case, it had received its stamp of being solved. People felt their natural emotions to what happened to Lynn and wishing with everything in them that it didn't happen, or that at least her killer would have been put behind bars and some sort of justice would have been served. People's obvious focus was on the recent updates in Lynn's case, and it didn't seem like anyone's attention was at all focused on helping solve Shaylene's case like it was when poor Lynn was still missing. It seemed like once again people had kind of moved on and forgot about Shaylene's case, and it hurt her family. In 1998, that same year, some more things would happen in Shaylene's case. According to the podcast Missing in Ohio, which I will link down below, in May of 1998, they would come across a bone in Union City, Ohio. And this seemed very promising because there was word that maybe Shaylene was buried out there. Could this bone be Shaylene's? Well, they tested the bone and no, it was not hers. Shaylene's case sat, once again, back at square one. Now, the two men that I have left unnamed in this video, the two men that were left unnamed by authorities, so I'm going to, of course, go along with that and leave their names out of this video. They have been looked at by authorities, and there are still question marks around their heads as to whether they had any involvement in her case or not. It mostly has to do with lack of evidence. But through the years of Shaylene's case, there were also two other suspects that were greatly talked about. But these two other suspects, they have officially been crossed off as having any involvement in Shaylene's case, but I will discuss them as well just because it was also a part of her case. The first is Christopher Below. He confessed to the shooting of a missing woman named Kathy Fetzer, who he confessed to abducting and murdering in November of 1991. He abducted her from Medina, Ohio. She had been on her way to the mall, and her car was later found near the apartment of one of her coworkers. Her body has never been found, but he confessed to it years later in 2003. He is currently incarcerated at an Ohio prison. Christopher Below, he is also suspected of the disappearance of multiple other women, but has only been convicted of Kathy's murder. For a period of time, police had looked at him as a suspect in Shaylene's case, but he is currently no longer a suspect. The second is Larry Dwayne Hall. He has been incarcerated at Butner Federal Correctional Complex in North Carolina for the 1993 kidnapping and murder of 15-year-old Jessica Roach, who was taken from Georgetown, Illinois, and found lifeless in a cornfield in Perrysville, Indiana, about a 25-minute drive away. Although he has only been convicted of one murder, it is suspected that he may be involved in the murders of up to 40 to 45 different young girls and women, most of those being missing or unidentified still to this day. Larry Dwayne Hall was obsessed with the Civil War, and he traveled around the country participating in Civil War reenactments. He even had quite accurate Civil War style sideburns. He drove around in a van, and he was known to stalk girls. After he did what he did to Jessica, he had actually returned to that area during the summer and fall of 1994 and was connected to 3 different stalking incidents there. And that's what led to him being on the police's radar. He was known to return to areas where he had luck beforehand. He was also connected to some stalkings of young girls in states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, Michigan, and Ohio, where Shaylene was from. Larry Dwayne Hall had been arrested on the date of November 15th, 1994, which was only about 3 months after Shaylene had vanished. He was 31 years old at the time. Since his incarceration, he has confessed to multiple other violent crimes, including the abduction of a woman named Lori Deppes from Wisconsin in 1992. He was known to be attracted to girls and women with shoulder-length brunette hair, just like Shaylene, and was known to lurk around malls, plazas, and convenience stores. And of course, Shaylene had vanished while in the parking lot of a grocery store. For a period of time, police had looked at him as a very solid suspect in Shaylene's case, but he has ultimately been erased from the suspect list. It seems to many that the person or people who abducted Shaylene that day in August of 1994 have more of a personal connection to her and the area. Not someone just strolling through looking for their next victim, not a serial killer. That there is a huge chance that the murderer or murderers, that they knew Shaylene personally, or at least knew of her. As for any recent updates in her case, there have been very few, unfortunately, but people who knew her, her family, her friends, and people who are also working on the case are still, to this day, 27 years later, working very hard to find out anything they can about what happened to her. I asked if there had been any Jane Does around that area ruled out as being Shailene, and I was informed that in the year 2014, a couple of Jane Does from Ohio had been tested and ruled out as being her. There have also been several Jane Does in Indiana whose DNA have been tested against Shailene's mother's DNA, and unfortunately still no match. They do have Shailene's DNA in the system though, so they will be able to see in the future if there is ever a possible match. Unfortunately, this is one of those cases without a body and without a crime scene, but like any other case out there, there's still hope. Shailene Marie Farrell was last seen wearing a boy's white t-shirt with the words "No Fear" in blue letters on the front, blue Piqua high school shorts, and black sandals. She had dark brunette shoulder-length hair and hazel eyes. She had pierced ears. Some physical characteristics of hers were that she had a mole below her lip, a birthmark on her left thigh above her knee, and a scar on her right leg above her knee. Also, she had 4 teeth missing and had fillings in 11 of her other teeth. She occasionally wore glasses. At the time of her disappearance, she stood at about 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighed about 135 pounds. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Shailene Farrell, you are urged to contact the Piqua Police Department at 937-778-2027. Remember that you can stay anonymous. So that is the case of Shailene Farrell, and it is so strange to me that only 2 months ago I had no idea about this case. I had never heard of it, looked into it. I didn't know who Shailene was or her story. And now I sit and wish that I could do everything possible to help solve it. There is a saying that a lot of people use when it comes to true crime cases, and I think there's even a podcast that is under this title, but it's "somebody knows something." And that is a phrase that I believe wholeheartedly when it comes to Shailene's case. Somebody in her state, the state where she went missing, the state that she called home in 1994, I believe knows what happened to her and where her remains are. I think people, especially in a small town, who get away with things like this and have for many years, they think that over time people are not going to care. And people still care. I've covered cases on my channel that went unsolved for over 50 years, over half a century. And I just believe that with a case like this, sometimes it just takes the right bit of information to come to light and the right person to come forward with that information. Again, I wanted to say thank you to David and also Colleen for helping me with my video, and for all of my subscribers. If you want to dive in more into Shailene's case or keep up to date with any updates that may happen in her case, you can go to facebook.com/justiceforshailene and follow that Facebook page. Thank you to everyone for taking a little bit of time out of your day to hear about Shailene's case. And if you are still here watching this video right now, make sure to click that like button on this video, because that helps push this video into the algorithm a little bit more, and that means that more people will see it, more people will hear about her case. If you have any older cases that you want me to talk about here on my channel, make sure to send those to gabulosiscaserequests@gmail.com. I try to look through all of those, and I have so many that I really want to get to. And with all that being said, I will see you all in the next one.